people, welcome to Who You Say I Am podcast for moms and wives and occasionally men. I'm your host, Gentrix, and I'm so happy you are able to find time to tune in today. If you're new here, Karibu Sana, please consider subscribing and even just going back to watch our previous uploaded videos. Leave a comment, like, and share this with your family and friends so that we can grow this community. I'm excited about today's episode, and so let's get right into it. So, if you're not new here, you know that we have been tackling a series on fighting fair, handling conflict in marriage. And today we have a very interesting topic, and I have titled it The True Villain in a Marriage. So, when I gave my husband my notebook to go through my notes, he read through like page one, page two, and he mentioned that I still don't know who the true villain in a marriage is. And I thought, exactly the point, just creating suspense for you to be able to watch until the end. Of course, I know if you're sharp enough, you already know who the true villain in a marriage is, but let's just stick around and let's learn together. So the other day, I was facilitating a session with young ladies, and one of the concerns and fears they brought up was how they see people relate well. They're happy, they're cozy before they get married, but then they get into marriage, and all of a sudden, trouble comes and they separate or they divorce, and they're thinking, Kwani, what is in marriage that makes people all of a sudden discover we are not right for each other? So they really had that concern, and even to the extent of being afraid of getting married. There could be many reasons for that. It could be that you get into marriage, you become hard hearted, stuck in your ways, not willing to compromise or even listen to your partner. It could be that you started wrong, ignoring red flags and thinking, oh, things will be better in marriage. You get there and you find out actually those problems and the things you're ignoring, they actually amplified in marriage. And then you start thinking, oh, I probably married the wrong person and all that. Or even maybe a situation where you set unrealistic expectations or you're not fully equipped to handle conflict. Then it becomes like every day you fight, you start thinking, oh, I'm unhappy, maybe I need to chuck the marriage. So many reasons. But most of all, and the reason why we are having this episode today is for me to introduce or to bring to your attention that number one, both you and I know that marriage is not man made at all. Anything that originates from God, anything that is of God, will definitely receive a lot of fights from the enemy, the devil, in case you don't know. So now you know the real villain is the devil. Because marriage is ordained by God. Marriage is meant to bring two people together. And there was a responsibility that Adam and Eve and you and me who are married are given to multiply, to fill the earth, to have dominion, to raise godly offspring generations that will bring impact and be light to the world, to just kind of saturate the whole world with the gospel. And the enemy does not. He will not sit by and watch you guys having a good marriage, having children, bringing them up in the ways of the Lord. He will not sit by and let you have that. So he will definitely fight your marriage. And guess what he will use? He will use your weaknesses. He will use your character flaws. He will use your those things. He does not introduce any new dynamic in your marriage. He just needs your sinful nature to come up, and then he says, yeah, that's the door I'm gonna use to wreak havoc or bring discord in this marriage. So are you allowing the devil to do that in moments where you feel you're overwhelmed? For example, as a mother, you feel so overwhelmed, all of a sudden it turns from you did a lot, you're tired, you need rest, to oh, my husband does not help me enough. In moments where you remember that, oh, I had envisioned a fairy tale marriage and all that, all of a sudden your husband does not buy enough gifts, does not cuddle you enough. You get into a cycle of comparison, and your lack of contentment comes up, and you think, oh, we don't have enough money, why are you not earning enough to facilitate me staying at home or to facilitate me shopping in Dubai, for example. Those things, those little things are the ones that the enemy will always use to bring those constant fights and arguments in your marriage. Trust me, nobody wants and nobody likes to live in a home where today you're fighting, in the morning you're fighting, in the evening you're fighting, tomorrow, like, there's no break. You will definitely get to a point where you feel, maybe I need a break. You understand? And so if you're not alert enough to realize that it could be the enemy at play at your sinful nature, I'm not excusing your the things that you need to work on. But the good news is, if you realize that the enemy might be using those little things, the little foxes in your personal life, but also in your marriage, to fight and to break you guys, then you're probably, yeah, a step ahead at fighting and winning that battle. There is a verse in the Bible in First John 3, in First John 2:16, and I want to read it really. Allow me to read it. So First John 2:16 says, "For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world." And just reading that verse, like anything that the enemy presents or dangles in front of us will kind of take advantage of the things, pride of life, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes. And I'll give you a good example that he doesn't use any new technique really. It's just the same old formula that he uses. Eve, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden when they were falling. I'll also read that verse in Genesis 3:6. So Genesis 3:6 says, so I'll read. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was to be desired to make one wise. Still the same formula. Lust of the eyes, she saw, it was good for food, that's lust of the flesh, and then desire to make one wise. That the tree was to be desired to make one wise, that's pride of life. The other story that is linked to how the enemy works when it comes to taking advantage of your weaknesses is when Jesus was being tempted in the garden, not the garden, in the wilderness, yes. It was the same thing. He took him to the top of the temple and showed him, all these kingdoms of the world, and asked him to bow before him, and he'll give. That's lust of the eyes. Turning rocks and stones into bread, lust of the flesh. And the other one, pride of life, him telling Jesus, throw yourself down and, let God send his angels to come and catch you. I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, but it's the same old formula. He will always use your eyes, your flesh, pride of life. And these are things, sinful nature, back to sinful nature. And I think for me, I'm sorry, I'm going ahead of myself, but I hope that as we are having this conversation, you're doing an inward check on your life, to see the things that you struggle with, to see the weaknesses you have, to see the things that entice you. Though that I don't say an apple because you don't know whether it was an apple, but those little nice worldly things that the enemy dangles in front of your face, knowing that you will actually bite because that's your weakness. I hope you're looking inwardly to find out what are those things and how it's really affecting your marriage. So he doesn't introduce anything new. He just uses you and your spouse to make you kind of butt heads. You will really actually stop and consciously decide, I'm not gonna let the enemy win, because do you really want to let the enemy win? Oh no, you do not want to let the enemy. I know for a fact deep down that if you love the Lord, you will not, and your desire is not to let the enemy win. You will get to a point where God's word and instruction guides your decision and your engagement with your spouse. Because imagine a situation where you're fighting and you just decide to pause. I don't want to use my husband. My husband can be very sarcastic, and there's a way he will deliver a statement and it will hurt to the core. So imagine, leave my husband out of this conversation. I want you to look at yourself. Imagine having a conversation with your spouse and then you feel the temptation of just throwing something out there because, I mean, you deserve that, you hurt me. So, let me just throw a mean word at you so that you also feel how I'm feeling. Imagine pausing at that moment and thinking, I'm a believer. I want to be Christ like. That's the goal of every believer. What would God have me do in this situation? Guess what? He would want you to breathe, be patient with your spouse, and think, I need to say, look for kind words, the kindest words you can find, and say that instead, because that way, that will be a small win against the enemy. And of course, it's small steps, but cautiously knowing and being alert that, devil, you won't. I feel like I'm preaching. Cautiously being cautious enough to know that, yeah, this is an opportunity the enemy is about to use, and I'm not gonna let him use me. Coming to a place where you acknowledge your weaknesses and your sinful self, and knowing that you need a savior. And instead of your marriage being a place where you're broken and hurt, it becomes a place for growth because you have surrendered it to the Lord and asking the Lord, yeah, use my marriage to show me and to illuminate the places that I need to grow. And it's almost like giving up your weaknesses to the Lord and acknowledging that I'm weak, so help me, as opposed to you allowing the enemy to use those weaknesses to bring and to break your marriage. So, which side are you going to choose? How are you going to handle your weaknesses? So, today I want to invite you, because this series has been about fighting fair. Cautiously, fight with your life, fight together with your spouse. And guess what? The full armor of God. You don't have to fight it alone, but you have the Lord on your side, who is for you and who has given you all the resources you need to fight the enemy. So fight together and fight with God on your side. See you on the next episode.